I'm not real. I just get some snacking. Really don't want anything. You going over there?
I mean, I'm about to be busy in 2 minutes, but that won't take long.
I do.
I'm not joking with you.
Pick up the card.
I mean, we should probably call them and see, like, 'cause they'll deliver it over here, is what he was saying.
Hello, everyone,
Well, I don't know if they'll come up here. I think they just come to the.
and welcome. I appreciate you all being here. If you would, if you make sure your microphones are off for just a second, that would be great. My name is Steve Sheldon. We're getting ready to get started here, and just a quick note is that certainly if you have questions along the way, just activate your mic by pressing the mic button. If you're not talking, it would be great just to keep the background noise down to a minimum if you would silence your microphones. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just to give you kind of a planning, so you understand, we're going to be here. The presentation is about an hour total, and hopefully you're going to find this to be a very beneficial hour. I know that report writing for home inspectors is probably one of the trickiest things, especially for new home inspectors, but I think it's also a tricky for seasoned home inspectors as well. So we're going to go through some things. Anybody have any questions before we get started? Okay, well, we've entitled this webinar, Communicating Your Findings, also known as report writing. And this is brought to you really by two companies, Home Inspection Training Institute, which I happen to be the president of, and a company called Hit It Pro, which is actually the company that is sponsoring with their software. And we're going to spend a little bit of time at the very end talking about the software. This is really not a pitch for you for the software. I know you may think it is, but it's not. And you'll see why as we go through this. But this is my personal information. If after the webinar you want to contact me for any reason, that's my phone number there. A little bit about my background. I'll keep it brief. But back in 2007, I started Probe Home Inspections in Atlanta, Georgia. That company is still ongoing, and I still do home inspections. I've been doing them now for, what is that, close to 15 years, and I've done basically over 3,000 inspections in that time frame. Less than some and more than others, I guess. Back in 2016, though, I founded the Home Inspection Training Institute. And really the reason I did that is because when I got involved in this business back in 2007, I was coming off a bankruptcy. And I essentially was in the real estate business, had lost almost everything, actually had lost everything, financially that is. And so I really needed to reinvent myself. And home inspection met the bill because it didn't cost a lot to get in it. And the upside was good. So anyway, after having achieved some success in that, I've been blessed. Back in 2016, I decided, this is really cool. I'm going to share this opportunity with other people and let them, folks who have not had that experience, see what it's like to be on your own and working for yourself. So many of you probably fall in that same category, somewhere in between maybe. But anyway, that's my background. And so let's get right into it now. Before we can talk about report writing, I think it just serves us well to kind of understand what exactly is a home inspection anyway. So, here's the definition of a home inspection in my mind. It's a professional home inspection is an objective, unbiased overall evaluation of the condition of a property at a specific moment in time. So that's what it is. So what isn't it? Well, nowhere in there did I say it's a recommendation. So it's not a recommendation. We know that it's not a predictor of the future either, because those of you who have inspected know that when you go out on an inspection, something could work today and very well may not work tomorrow. So it's not a predictor of the future. And it's also not a grade. You're not grading the property in any way, shape, or form to your client. It's simply an objective, unbiased overall evaluation. So with that in mind, let's talk about what's the reason for a report anyway? Well, it's proof you were actually there. I mean, if you were there doing, cutting their grass, or if you were there renovating their bathroom, of course, your finished product's going to be, the grass is going to be cut or the bathroom is going to be finished, right? But as a home inspector, we don't have really anything to leave behind other than that report. That's really our completed project. It's the only work product that we're leaving behind. It serves as a summary of our findings, what we did there the last 3 hours, and it essentially provides your client with some negotiating leverage so that they can finalize the contract with the seller. And of course, the last thing it does really is just justify your fee. So with that in mind, who's going to read this report anyway? Well, the buyer hopefully will read it, the person who paid you for it. Their agent would typically read that report. The selling agent, and I put a question mark by that because I feel very strongly about this. The person who paid you for that report, it's their report. And typically that person is going to be the buyer. So it's the buyer's report, and it's not my prerogative as a home inspector to share that report with anybody. So I make it a point not to, and I let my buyer know. Even if my buyer says, yeah, you can send it to the selling agent or whatever, I tell them that I'd prefer that they do that because it's their report. And you know how communications can go. They can tell me 1 minute to send it to the selling agent, and I do, and then all of a sudden they come back and say, oh, I didn't mean the selling agent, I meant my agent. Now all of a sudden, I'm in trouble. So I just give it to the person who paid for it. And that report really needs to satisfy both parties. And I don't think satisfy is a great word. I wish I could come up with a better one, but I'm not trying to satisfy anybody. I guess a better way is both parties have needs, and my report really has to kind of fit the needs of both the seller and the buyer, the person paying for it. What do I mean by that? Well, my client and their agent are going to be using this report as a negotiating tool, right? So they're going to be using it for that purpose. The seller's going to be using it, what portions they get of it, they're going to be using it to make the agreed upon repairs. So the report has to be specific enough, okay? And my experience has been, by the way, that the real estate agents literally copy and paste the comments in the report to the addendum of the contract. So they're taking my exact words and they are just cutting and pasting and putting it into the contract. So very important that what I say is what I mean. Just a reminder to anybody, if you folks could turn off your microphones.
Ends up being like the dad thing.
See if I can. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
During the pandemic, we started and then we had this huge hiatus, went away, came back, and then I was very much a stickler for trying to be as safe as possible. So I was staying with both my makeup artist and
try to figure out whose microphone's on because I'd like to silence them. Okay. So here's the thing about the report. The report really needs to be straightforward. It needs to be concise. I'm a firm believer in the theory, less is more, okay? I've seen inspectors write reports that just go on ad nauseum in a comment, and I think it's too much, too verbose. We try to keep things simple. The old KISS principle, keep it simple. I like the report to be non-alarmist. I don't want to get anybody excited. Keep in mind that the person paying for this report, the buyer, they're worried about their mortgage, they're worried about moving, they've got a lot of things on their mind. The last thing they need is a home inspector who's going to go in there and just upset the apple cart. I mean, I've got to communicate my findings, but there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. So I prefer to do it in a non-alarmist manner. The report needs to be easy on the eyes. So what I mean by that is just easy to read. It can't be confusing or jumbled. It's got to be organized. It has to be easy also to understand. And it has to be actionable. And what I mean by actionable is I have to be able in those comments to convey what it is the defect is and how or what needs to be done going forward with that. And so it has to be actionable. The seller has to be able to take action and make the repair. Okay. So with that being in mind, there are different types of reports. I'm sure you've all been exposed to them in one way or another. Believe it or not, when I got started in the business, the guy that trained us in the marketing and report writing section, he was actually retiring, and he did all his reports by hand. And I looked at a couple of his longhand reports, and I was like, if I had to do that, I'd find a different occupation. But anyway, nobody does it longhand anymore. It's all computer generated. So that's what we're going to focus on. And what I want to focus on too is the software considerations that you may need to be thinking about in selecting a software that you want to use. You want to make sure that first of all, that software meets or exceeds standards of practice. Okay, that's very important. Now, I don't know whether you're all using the ASHI standards of practice, the American Society of Home Inspectors, or if you're using the INTRNACHI standards. But you ought to pick one, either one of those, and make sure that the software you're going to use meets or exceeds those standards. Now, I can tell you that there is software out there that does not, and it's probably pretty cheap. But that's one of the reasons why, is it doesn't really meet the standards. So you want to be consistent. If you're going to practice home inspection to the standards, which most of us do, then you're going to want a software that meets that need. You got to decide whether it's cloud-based or downloadable, narrative style or a checklist. We're going to talk about these. Complete the report as you go, which is more like a mobile app, which seems to be a popular thing these days, or whether you want to complete the report after the inspection. So let's talk about these. Meet or exceeding the standards of practice. As I just mentioned to you, you've got these two organizations, so you should follow the standards of one of these two, okay? And you should reference that in your agreement. I'm not going to talk about agreements here tonight, but hopefully you all know that when you when you agree to do an inspection for somebody, you have them sign an inspection agreement, okay? Because if you don't have them sign the agreement, there's really no contract between the two of you. So it's a good idea to have a contract and also reference these standards in your contract as to what your guiding force is, which is the standards of practice. And here's the standards of practice. The purpose is really to establish a minimum standard for home inspections performed by home inspectors who subscribe to this standard. Home inspections performed using the standard are intended to provide the client with information about the condition of the inspected systems and components of the home at the time of the inspection. Okay, so then you decide whether you want a cloud-based system or a downloadable version. Okay, what does that mean exactly? Well, you can either download it on your computer or onto your phone or whatever, and you basically control the template, okay? You have control over the template. It allows you to make modifications to the report's appearance, add to the comment library, if you like to change margins around and, you like that, all kinds of creative stuff like that, then you're probably going to want a downloadable version, okay, where you can control the template. A cloud-based system just really requires you to be connected to the internet when you're doing this, when you're doing the report. And it allows you to customize individual reports, but the template really is not changeable as a template. You can change it per report. The comment library is pretty much pre-installed. So a lot of your comments, the things that you see commonly, those comments are already installed in the software, and you can pick and choose the ones you want to use. You got to decide really then whether you want a narrative style or a checklist style, and there are different types. A narrative style reads more like a book or a document. I think it's easier on the eyes. It classifies comments so that you can actually summarize your findings. I think it's much easier to follow, but a checklist, some people like checklists. I don't particularly like them, but checklists replace the narrative. So they don't read like a book, they read like a checklist. There's normally no summary section in those reports that I'm familiar with. And there's often no classification of the comment. They don't divide the comments up based on the seriousness of whatever it is you found. And we'll talk about more of that in just a second. But here's a narrative style. This is the software the Hit Pro software, just to give you an idea of what this looks like. Now I know, unfortunately, trying to make this as visible as I'd like to make it was a little challenging, but at least you can kind of understand they got a cover page with the report. And then we have a summary section, okay? And that summary section divides the comments up. And I'll show you what that is in a minute, but you can see that it just reads more like a book. Okay, and then once we get through the summary section, there is the guts of the report. This is where all the pictures go, the comments go. And the summary is not something you compose really, it's automatic. So when you write the comments within the report, they will migrate up to the summary section on their own at the end, creating a nice, neat thing for your real estate agents. They like that, to be able to view the summary without all the other pictures and et cetera. So that's what that looks like. Now, there's also other types of reports. This is another type of report that just gives you, again, more checklist kinds of stuff. This is more of a checklist. So that's what a checklist version is. And you might want to just view some of these on the internet on your own so you can see what they offer. But, you know, most of the reporting software out there is going to offer you the ability to take photographs and insert your pictures where you want to insert them. Here's another example of a report with the checklist. I don't like the checklist because it's hard to follow the checklist. I've got to follow those check marks. And then there's a lot of stuff on there that's not even checked off. So it's kind of like wasting space, in my opinion. And then you got to decide whether you want to complete this report as you go. Okay, now for those of you out there that are new inspectors, and I'm an instructor first and foremost, and I always recommend to my classes, to my students, that you do not do a mobile app getting started in this business. They're available, and they probably, I don't use one myself. I'm not saying that makes it bad. I'm just saying that I think we'll talk about it in a second, but here's the problem. Here's the mobile app. You're going to write the report in real time. So you're literally going to do your inspection and write the report as you go. Okay. So that's fine in some respects. The challenges, though, to it is I think it increases your likelihood of errors. And the reason I say that is if I'm doing an inspection on my mobile app here, and I'm doing this and I'm looking at what I'm looking at and writing the report at the same time, what if I get a little glitch or something in the software while I'm trying to do the report? Okay. I mean, I know you can walk and chew gum at the same time, but I think trying to report and inspect at the same time are two very distinct activities. And I think your chances of missing something go up. And when you miss something, your liability goes up. So I think as a new inspector, why take on that added liability unnecessarily? So I think it increases your likelihood of errors. You know, the other thing is too much time at the property. You know, in this era of COVID, I'm telling you, I found this to be the case, and maybe some of you have also, is people are working from home now. They've got their kids at home, they're at home, and they do not want to give up their house for 3 or 4 hours. I mean, they're willing to let you come in and inspect for a couple hours, but if you tell them it's going to be 3 hours, I was just on an inspection not too long ago, and I was down in the basement and I had the electrical panel off, and I was probably only 2 hours into the inspection, and the homeowner got home while I was there. And so she comes down to the basement and it was like, are you going to be done soon? And I felt like, you know, man, be real subtle about me taking up your time, right? But I mean, I think she was at her wit's end. She had the kids with her. And so she was like, you know, are you done? And so you feel like you're pressured at that point. I got to get out of here, right? So if you're doing the report as you go in the mobile app, I guarantee you're going to be at that house a minimum of 3 hours. And a home inspection shouldn't take you really 3 hours as a general rule. But that's conversation probably for another time. But so it's too much time at the property. And have you really saved much time at the end of the day by doing it as you report it? I don't think the risk is worth it. So I believe in the completing it later. So what I do is, you know, I focus in on my report. I focus in, you know, I report what I see. That's what I'm focused on. I'm not focused on writing the finished product. I think it reduces my liability, especially, like I said, if you're a newer inspector. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I feel like completing it later, you know, really is a better way to do it. As I said, less time at the property, So the seller likes me more already because I'm not going to be there for 3 and 4 hours at a time. Now, the challenge is it's going to take me a little more time on each report, not a lot, but I probably, it will take me longer than if I did the mobile report, probably maybe 30 minutes longer. I don't think it's going to be that much longer. And it also requires that I have a good documentation method for the things that I find wrong in the home, the defects. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a second. Because I don't know how you do it now, but I'm going to give you a thought on how you might want to approach you recording your findings in an inspection. So the complete report later method, this is what I do in my inspections. I treat my inspection report as a story I'm telling from the beginning to the end, and I do it via pictures. I don't record. I used to record things. I used to write them down. I've done them both. And so I finally came up with the photographic method. So I take no notes. Everything I do is a photograph. And just to give you an example, well, I think of my photographs as a way to remember every single detail of my story. Okay. And before I get into that, I encourage you all to have some sort of a process you use to do your inspections. What does that mean? Well, basically what that means is an inspection process is, in my mind, a methodical means by which to perform a consistent inspection each and every time so as not to omit useful information or expose myself to unnecessary liability. So I used to do, I used to get to an inspection. Now this goes back quite a ways, but I used to do an inspection where I would get there and go, now do I start on the outside of the day or do I start on the inside? I mean, that may sound to you like, that's pretty crazy, but that's the way I did it. Nobody really trained me on adopting a process, okay? So the process, basically, you got to develop one. And I'm going to share mine with you quickly. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that, but I think it's important enough that if you want these, if you want to do a consistent inspection, you need to follow the same process every time, okay? And so I'm going to share with you my process here. And my process basically consists of everything from determining where do I park my car? And that may sound to you intuitive. Well, what do you mean, where do I park my car? In the driveway, of course. Well, if you said driveway, I would say I would challenge you on that. Unless the home is vacant and you know it's vacant, that's not your home. So you really should be parking in the street, somewhere not on the driveway, unless I said the house is vacant, that would be different. And then I want to take myself and my tools on a walkway, concrete, some way to the front door. I don't want to be crossing their sod, their front yard. You'd be amazed at the number of inspectors who do that. And that to me is just not a professional image of where you want to be. But anyway, then I want to ring the doorbell. And of course, most of you probably already know that how you're going to get in the house, whether you have the call before showing code, the software that allows you to get into the lockbox. If you don't, then that's probably something you'll need to look into as to how you're going to get access, because most agents do not want to babysit you on a home inspection. They don't want to be there to let you in and lock up when you leave. If they find out they have to do that with you, I endearingly refer that to one and done. You'll do one inspection for that agent and then you won't do any more because they'll find somebody who has access. Okay. I like to wear shoe covers when I go inside the home. So I'm going in, I'm putting my shoe covers on before I go in the house. I'm making a direct line to the dishwasher and I'm putting it on a short cycle. And the reason I'm doing that is we are required as home inspectors to check dishwashers. We're required to check the appliances. In fact, we're required to check by the standards. We're required to check all permanently installed items. A dishwasher would be one of them. I also check, refrigerators and things like that, but you don't have to do that. I'm just saying anything that's permanently installed, you should. So I go to the dishwasher and I want to put that on a short cycle because I do not want that thing to be running 2 hours from now. I want it to be on a short cycle, and you'll figure it out pretty quickly how to set those on most dishwashers. And then what I do is I go to all the thermostats in the house and I set all the thermostats. Now, if let's just say today would be a great example. It was a little cool out today. So I would set all those thermostats to heat. And I'd probably set them up to about 75, 80 degrees. And then once I've done that, I'm going to open the garage door. Okay, normally that's going to be a garage door opener. So all I got to do is at the kitchen, just stand there, tap the button, and open the garage door. Then I'm going to make a beeline back to the dishwasher because I'm checking for leaks now. Okay, I want to make sure that the dishwasher isn't leaking. If it's not leaking, then I'm just going to let it go through its cycle, through its short cycle. If it's leaking, of course, I'm going to shut it off and dry up the floor if I've gotten any water on the floor. That's why I'm going right back to it before I do anything else. Then once I've done that, I'm going to go back to the front door, take my shoe covers off, okay, because now I start on the outside of the home. And the way I do it is I do the grounds and exterior inspection first, and I do anything that comes in my path. So that includes a partial air conditioning and electrical inspection because I'm going to see the outdoor air conditioning unit or heat pump, whatever it is. I'm also going to see the meter, the electric meter, and I'm going to see the ground rod connection and so forth. So I do everything as I come to it. Didn't used to always do that. And I remember going home at times to write my report and I'd go, oh, geez. I was going to get back and look at the water heater and I forgot to get back and look at the water heater. And now I have a report that has no information on the water heater. So that's embarrassing. Okay. So when I reach something on my inspection, it's getting inspected as I pass it. So that's why I say that my grounds and exterior inspection includes a partial air conditioning and electrical inspection. I also do my inspection of the garage. So whatever's in the garage is getting inspected. If the water heater's in the garage, it's getting inspected. If the electric panel happens to be in the garage, it's getting inspected. Okay. Just as soon as I come to it. Now you can imagine what I'm telling you. I didn't really say this, but I do everything in a clockwise fashion. So I'm always starting on the left side of the home and I'm working my way around. Always. Never goes the reverse direction. Always goes that way because then I know where I am when I start looking back at my pictures. Okay. Then I add my shoe covers. I'm done outside. I add my shoe covers and go back in. I go to the attic now. I take my shoe covers off when I get to the attic because I don't want to be tracking anything that I see in the attic or anything that I walk on in the attic. I don't want to be tracking that down into their home. So I'll take my shoe covers off and do my attic inspection. When I'm done with my attic inspection, I come down, put my shoe covers back on, and I move in a left to right direction. So that to me is when as I face the house from the street, whatever that window is up there, that's going to be the first room I go to, whether that's, I don't care what it is. If it's a closet, if it's a bathroom, it's always going to be the first room that I go to. Okay. I'm going to do the top floor. When I'm done with the top floor, I'm going to check the thermostat because I've got it on heat now. I should be able to get a good reading for my heat that I need to get. And then I'm going to switch the thermostat back over to cool now because I'm going to have to check it in the other mode. In this particular instance that I pointed out to you, we started out in heat mode, so I'm going to turn it over into cold mode. Then I'm going to go down to the next level, and I'm on the main floor now. I'm doing the same thing, left to right. And I'm going to change the temperature again. I'll check the temperature, then change it to the other side. Now, the other thing about the main floor is I always skip the kitchen. So wherever that kitchen is, I'm doing that last. Okay, so if the kitchen happens to be on the left side of the home, it's not going to get done until the very end of that floor. Because that way it ensures me that I'm attentive to the appliances that I've turned on and off and I don't leave anything on. That's why I do it that way. So I go to the kitchen, I check the appliances. I want to make sure they're all off before I leave the kitchen. And then of course, if there's a basement, I go down and do the same thing. So I've done everything pretty much in the same fashion. Check that temperature again and switch the thermostat back over. Now when I'm done, I go to my final walkthrough starting on the top floor. I go back, do a final temperature check of the temperature in cooling mode now, record my findings, and then I reset that thermostat to what it was set at when I got to the home. And I usually take a picture of that so I know what it was set at. I'm not guessing or trying to remember. I've actually got a photograph of it, so I'm courteous enough to return their thermostat. Nobody's going to like to come home and it's 90 degrees in their home because you forgot to turn the thermostat back. The same is true really with we'll get to it in a second as appliances, but I turn off all the lights, make sure that all the plumbing fixtures are off, just to make sure that, I didn't leave anything running, that could get me in trouble. Then I do my final kitchen appliance check. I check the oven to make sure that it's off, because nobody wants to come home to an oven that's set at 350 and they've been at work all day. And you could have at least been considerate enough to bake them some cookies if you're going to leave their oven on all day, right? And then the last thing I do is I do the crawl space if they happen to have one, and then the roof inspection. Those are always the things I do last. And then as just a word of extra caution to you, then I put the key back in the box. 2 additional rules: never leave the master suite with the water running. And you'll know what I mean by that when you see a jetted tub, because you are required to check a jetted tub, and you'll start running the water in a jetted tub and you'll be like, gee, this could take 10 or 15 minutes to get the water over the jets high enough so I can test it. And then you'll go, I'll just go down the hall and do a quick, inspection of those rooms. And then all of a sudden you get distracted, and guess what? Somebody says from down, this happened to me. Somebody says, is there water supposed to be coming through the dining room chandelier? And you go, oh my God. It'll happen to you. Trust me, if you don't have these little systems in place. And never ever leave the kitchen with the oven on. Okay, so that's why I do the things in the order in which I do them, because it keeps me from being my own worst enemy sometimes when I get distracted. Okay, so getting back to, I know we haven't talked about report writing yet as far as writing the comments, but we're almost there. What I wanted to let you know is I use the photographs, like I said, to replace words in my report. So I don't use most of those photographs in the report. Just to give you an example, those pictures are there just to give me my location, tell me where I am. So I might take, on a home inspection, 150 photos, and at the end of the day, 30 of them may make it in my report. Okay. Most of them are there to tell me where I am. So this, just to give you an example of that, is here's some photos. Now I didn't take all, I'm just giving you an example. So all these photos, I know in my mind where I start the inspection. So I always go left to right. So I know exactly what I'm looking at as I go through these pictures and the order, okay, that I'm taking them. Those will include defect pictures as well as location pictures, just so I know where I am. And so you might be thinking, well, Steve, that's great, but how do you take pictures of certain things? How do you take pictures of defects that you can't take pictures of? I mean, there's certain defects you can't take pictures of, right? And you're right. So I have my own signals. So for example, here I'm going into a master bedroom, for example. All right. And then I go into the bathroom, and there, notice that this sink right there to the right is the predominant, you got the full sink there. That tells me that's the sink that I'm looking at, the right vanity sink that happens to have a stopper that's not working. That's my picture in my world of a stopper that's not working correctly. Okay. Doesn't mean a diddly to you. That's what it means to me. That's why that picture is not going in the report. The comment's going to go in the report. Okay. But they don't need a picture to see that. So the pictures go where I think they need to see a picture to understand the defect. But if they don't, if it's just something simple like, well, I'll give you another example. Now, some of this may be beyond where some of you are as a home inspector at this point, or maybe not true of your jurisdiction where you do home inspections. But in Atlanta, for example, you're required to have a thermal expansion tank. So when their tank, they don't have one, I take a picture that tells me there's no thermal expansion tank. Now, that picture right there may not even go in the report, okay? That's just for me to know they don't have a thermal expansion tank. So I can write the comment that goes with them not having a thermal expansion tank. You might say, why are you taking a picture of their front hall closet? Well, that just tells me where the defect is that I found. The door that's rubbing at the top of the closet, that's where it is, right? So again, that's not going to go in my report, that picture, but the comment is that the front hall closet door rubs at the top, okay? I have signals for the door not latching. Now, whenever I take a picture from that angle, that means that door doesn't latch. I'd have a picture preceding that of what door it was, so what bedroom it was. Again, everything being in order, I have pictures of everything, so I know exactly where I am at any given moment. This is just to give you another example of the sign language kind of thing. This door only works as a garage door opener. Only works when I press the button continuously. That's a sensor issue, by the way, with the garage door. I see that that's fairly common. So that's my picture in my world that tells me what that is. Again, that picture is not going to go in the report. The comment will go in the report, but not the picture. as opposed to that one, which means the garage door is loose. And then I've got some other ones that I just share with you real quick. Poor flow. That's my picture for a loose fixture. So whenever I put my hand down there and I'm touching the fixture from the front, that just means it's loose. This is my picture for a loose toilet. That's where the toilet is loose on the floor. It needs to be tightened. Again, that's not going to go in the report, but that picture tells me that that toilet in that particular bathroom is a loose toilet. And you can probably see here that I'm saving myself a lot of time writing things down. I mean, there were times where I literally got home trying to write an inspection report and I couldn't read my own handwriting and I'd have to leave that thing out of the report, which is, you know, pretty derelict of duty. I didn't want to do that, but if I can't read my comment, this is an anti-tip brackets missing on the range. Whenever I take my picture from that angle, that's what it means to me. Again, doesn't mean anything to you. And that picture is not going to go in my report. This is a normal garbage disposal. That just tells me there's a garbage disposal at the house. This is my terminology for a noisy garbage disposal. You know, hello, you know, that kind of thing. That's my indication it's noisy. That's my indication it doesn't work. Wobbly fan. That's my picture for a wobbly fan. Just the fan in the on position. I just take it. That's my noisy fan again. Remember the, okay, that's my noisy fan. Okay, so that's how my pictorial works, okay? So now you understand how I do it, and that's how I do pictures, and that's how they relate to me. So with that being said, I have a couple of other things I just want to mention to you, and that is there's certain words I never use in a report. And I want to go over these quickly, but I never use I. Remember my report, what is my home inspection? It's an objective overall evaluation. When I start using I in there, it no longer becomes objective in my opinion, okay? So I, we, only, like it's only rotted behind that one area. You want to be careful of using only because you may find that there are defects beyond what you saw, and it may not only be at the front right corner, it could be at the back left corner and you just didn't see it. Must, nobody must do anything. So I get rid of that word. Has to be, I lose that word too. You're not obligating anybody to do anything. So that word is not a good one. I don't think ought is a good word. And I definitely want to stay away from things like structurally sound, okay? Because you know what? I like to stay away from the problem word too. Nothing's a problem, okay? Somebody once told me problems are opportunities, right? So we'll think of it that way instead of thinking of problems. And then we stay away from code because we're not doing code inspection here. All right, you're not a code inspector. If nobody's told you that yet as a home inspector, then they were derelict in their duties because you're not a code inspector and you do not want to quote code in an inspection report. There are inspectors out there that do, and I'm telling you, I think they're asking for trouble. You're not a code inspector. The codes vary from one municipality to another. You couldn't possibly know all the code. So why do we want to stay away from structurally sound? Because you're not an engineer. Unless you are, stay away from it, okay? Only a licensed structural engineer can make those kinds of statements, and you don't want to have the liability of doing that, okay? So stay away from that, and also stay away from the code, okay? You're not a code inspector, and that's probably a good thing. You know, code inspectors don't make as much as home inspectors do. So, and you don't know the difference of every code as I just mentioned to you. So all these different municipalities may have some version of the code, but they're all different, okay? And so you can't possibly keep up with all that. Okay, the other thing I want you to recommend to your, if you see a leak, for example, we all see these things on a home inspection. And so there's always a question of how do I report that? Okay, well, I always recommend with things like that to check with the current owner. Who would know better than the current owner if that's active or not active? I can put my moisture meter on there and you know what, today it's not active. Or if it's related to a roof leak, you know, maybe it hasn't rained in 2 weeks. So that's not going to register moist in my meter. So I want to make sure that I don't say that it's a previous stain because it may be active when it rains. So better to just say that it wasn't active at the time of the inspection and check with the current owner for more information. Again, I use that a lot when I see things like that, because again, it puts the onus now on the seller, right? Takes it off my back and puts it on their back to say, hey, they got to fess up. You know, they should be honest with you. And if they're not, that's their problem, not mine. Okay. I also like to use the term prior to closing. For example, here, a large crack undergoing apparent movement was observed in the right foundation wall. Prior to closing, recommend further evaluation of the foundation by a qualified foundation contractor. Again, I love that term prior to closing. If I can't see something, for example, if I can't get to something, it's inaccessible. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a minute. I recommend to them prior to closing, you get that inspected. And here's a little piece of advice I'll give you. I tell my buyers, if that's the case, if there's something I can't see, like let's say I can't see the electric panel, I'll tell them, hey, you know what? I strongly recommend prior to closing, you get that inspected. And they might say to me, well, will you come back? And I say, yeah, for $150, I'll come back. But guess what? That shouldn't come out of your pocket. That should come out of the seller's pocket. So I let my client know very quickly, I don't expect them to pay me really for it. The seller should be paying me for that because the seller knew I was coming to do a home inspection and they did not make the electric panel accessible for whatever reason, right? So it's their fault. And then I don't collect the money, by the way, from the seller. I collect it from my buyer because, you know, I'm not going to ever see the seller again, but they will at closing or, you know, thereabouts, of course. So that's an income opportunity for you. So take advantage of it. And just remember that inspection report's your final product. Everybody's going to be using it to determine the next step in the transaction. And so while you do need to speak carefully to your client when you're doing the home inspection, it's really what you put in that report. It's what you put in writing that everybody's going to hold you accountable. Okay. You can always say when you said something to somebody, well, you must have misunderstood what I said. I didn't really say that. And you can get away with that. But once you've committed it to the paper, you know, it's pretty hard to go back on that. So also remember, reporting on the things you didn't do is just as important as reporting on the things you did do. So if, for example, we won't see this in Atlanta very much, but if the roof was covered with snow, then say it. But not only say it, put a picture in the report. There it is, just like that. Why? Because you will prevent any confusion. If you just say there was snow on the roof, somebody could say, well, it didn't snow that day. The day you were there, it was, you know, that was the day before it snowed. No, here's my picture, right? So I can prove it. It takes 2 seconds to put that picture in there. Never state in writing too, by the way, how much longer something's going to last. In fact, most of the standards of practice just require you to report on things that are near their life expectancy, end of their life expectancy. So for water heaters, furnaces, air conditioning units, just go by the age. And you all should know what those are. Water heaters 10 to 12, outdoor units 12 to 15, furnaces 20 to 25. If you don't know those things, then just look them up, but they're pretty standard. So here was the, you know, reporting on things you couldn't see. There's the electric panel back there. I'm not going to go inspect that. So I'm going to put that in my report, document the fact that I couldn't get to it, put the picture in there, and recommend that they get that inspected prior to closing. The same would be true of exterior portions of the home that I couldn't see due to ivy or whatever. Okay, just say that you couldn't review it and take a picture of it. These are all things to mitigate your liability. You know, this isn't a great picture of it, but you'll go to some homes where the basement, the foundation wall, one of the foundation walls will be completely covered with owner storage items. You can't see it. So you want to make sure that they know that you didn't inspect that wall, because what happens if they move all those owner storage items, they move in and there's a big old crack with maybe water damage. I mean, you theoretically could be held responsible for that. So you want to make sure that you report the things you did not inspect. This one I remember on an inspection very well. There was a time in my career, this is covering a crawl space. There was a time in my career I had to take that thing down and try to put it back up. I don't do that anymore. Why? Because if I don't put that back up just the way they had it, somebody's going to complain about it, right? So I just take a picture of it and say, listen, get this examined by a qualified contractor prior to closing. Okay. So we talked about this already, so I'm not going to try to be correct with your grammar. Okay. Nobody likes reports that are written that don't make sense. Okay, so try to make sure that you review your reports. All right, now we're going to talk about the 4 W's of report writing. Okay, and this is what I call really, if you have 4 elements to a comment, you can write a comment for anything. And that's what I wanted to mention to you, is how to actually write a comment that makes sense. So in the software that I was going to show you this evening, the defects are really in 5 categories. You've got to kind of identify which category the defect you're looking at falls in. One of them is a concern. That would be one category. The other is a safety issue, a repair, an improvement item, or a monitor. Okay? So what do those mean exactly? Well, a concern is normally a high dollar item that could potentially impact the buyer's decision to go forward with the transaction. So it's normally going to be expensive. There are not too many of those in a report. I can go 3 or 4 reports without a concern in the report. That's how limited I use that one. That's a pretty high bar. A safety issue, of course, is anything that could cause injury or death. There are usually several of those in a report. Repair items are items that are clearly broken and need to be fixed to operate correctly. An improvement item is an item that should be considered for repair, but it may not necessarily be broken. And then the very last category is a monitor. It's any item that should be observed over time. It's also a place where I can put any kind of FYI items, like I was at a home recently where they had a generator. Well, standards of practice do not require that you inspect a generator. So I just put that in as a monitor. I mentioned to them that they had a generator. It's not included in a home inspection, and that they might want to get that generator evaluated by a qualified contractor prior to closing. So that went into the monitor section. So basically with that in mind, we label the defect and then we write the comment. And every defect and corresponding comment has 4 elements, okay? And if you'll list the elements in the order in which we're going to go through them here, then writing a comment becomes really as simple as 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mean, it's really that easy. So here's how I want you to look at it. So here we go. The first W is, what's the specific object? Okay, what specifically am I looking at? The second thing is, where is it located? Specifically, where is it located? Very important that you're very specific about the location. 3, what's the actual defect? And then 4 is, what's the solution? Meaning, not how do you fix it, but who do you call on? Who's going to be the person that has to be the one that fixes that? Is it an electrician? Is it a plumber? Is it a structural contractor? Who is it? You're not there to tell them how to fix something specifically. You're there to direct them as to who needs to fix that, troubleshoot it, and repair it, whatever the problem is. Okay, so let's just go through a couple of quick examples. This is an upstairs spare bathroom sink. So let me go through the elements, and hopefully you just follow along with me here. It'll make sense. So what's the object? Well, the object is, specifically, what's the object? Well, the object is actually the sink, correct? Where is it? Very specifically, where is it? Upstairs spare bathroom. That's very important. Some people would say bathroom. Well, if the house has 4 bathrooms, what bathroom are we talking about, right? Remember, somebody's got to do the repair. This comment has to be understood by the person on the receiving end that's going to be tasked with doing the repair. So where is it? So as we mentioned, upstairs spare bathroom. What's the defect? Well, the defect, as you probably all realized, is it's a clogged drain. And what's the solution? Well, the solution is to have it repaired by a qualified contractor. Now, once you have those 4 elements, this is why it's so easy. Once you have those 4 elements, it's like following the bouncing ball. The sink in the upstairs spare bathroom is clogged and needs repair by a qualified contractor. I mean, how easy is that, right? And if you'll keep it in that order, what I find so often is people want to be creative and they know what they want to say, but they start here or they start here. If you'll just keep it in the order, object, location, defect, solution, it'll be so easy. There's the comment. And I wrote it up as a repair. Okay, so I have to identify it first. That's clearly a repair item. All right, let me give you another example. Okay, so some of you may or may not know what I'm looking at here, so I'm just going to tell you what it is. We're looking, of course, at what's the object? The object here, we're in an attic. The object is the insulation. Okay, where is it located? Specifically, where is it located? Okay, that's key. Well, right rear side of the attic, isn't it? But it also happens to be at the soffit. The soffit at the right rear side of the attic. That's where specifically it's located. What's the defect? Well, the defect is it's causing an obstruction. We don't have any ventilation going on there at the eave. Okay, we blocked the soffits. What's the solution? Add baffles. Okay. So now you can write the comment again. The insulation at the soffit at the right rear side of the attic is causing an obstruction. Recommend adding baffles. That's how simple it is. Now, don't worry about the prettiness of the comment. Okay, that'll come with time. That's a perfectly good comment right there. Now, I've just rewritten that comment with the green. Okay, the same comment, I just added a couple of embellishments there. Okay. But did those things necessarily change the comment itself? No, they really didn't. They gave a little further, it prevented proper ventilation, and it's going to prolong the life of the roof, the better ventilation we have. But I didn't need to put those in there to make that a perfectly good comment. And that's my point to you is don't worry about writing the perfect comment. That's what takes you too much time. Write a good comment, and over time, you'll build on it just naturally. Okay, here's a picture window in the master bathroom. Again, you got to know what the defect is. So, I mean, that is something you need to know, and hopefully you got the training and you're going through whatever you need to go through to make sure that you're identifying defects correctly. But that's not really what the purpose of this webinar is. But so what's the object? Well, the object is the picture window, correct? And where is it? Well, we know that it's located in the master bathroom. What's the defect? Well, we know that it has a damaged or broken seal, correct? And we know that the only way to repair a damaged seal is to replace the window. Okay, by a qualified contractor. So now we have our 4 elements, and then we can write the comment very quickly from that. The picture window in the master bathroom has a damaged or broken seal. Recommend replacement of the window by a qualified contractor, and I wrote it up as a repair. So that makes sense, right? And then I got one more for you here, actually 2 more real quick that we'll go through. There's a prettier comment. I don't think that makes it so much prettier though, that green. It's telling them what a broken seal is if they didn't know, but you know what? I don't think you need to put that in there necessarily. It doesn't really do much, in my opinion, to add to the comment. And like I said before, I think less is more in many cases. So just keep it simple. Here's an attic furnace filter. And of course, we'll go right to the comment there. Okay, we'll write it right now. I'm going to call that out as a repair. And I'm looking at the filter. So the filter at the attic furnace is dirty and needs to be replaced. I mean, how simple is that? I could just, but it's so easy for me now because I keep those 4 W's. They're just on the top. I mean, that's the order I think in now. I don't have to consciously think about it. I just think in that order. And that's why I'm trying to get you, if you'll, the first, time you use this process, if you want to use it, is write down, object, location, defect, and solution, and then just fill in the blanks there, and you'll get into thinking that way. Which is critical. You can write a comment for the most difficult stuff. I mean, here looks like an overwhelming photograph, right? Oh my gosh, what do we got going on here? Well, we got a couple of things. We got active moisture, and we've got a mold-like substance, right? So we kind of got 2 things going on here. So how would I write that comment? If you want to take a second, just write that down right now. Just write down yourself how you might write this comment up. Indicating first how you would classify it. Would you classify it as a concern, safety, repair, improve, monitor? And then just decide, okay, once I've decided that, now I'm gonna formulate the comment. And so here would be an example of that comment. The ceiling at the bottom of the basement stairs is wet and there is a mold-like growth present in this area. Recommend a licensed mold remediation specialist to further evaluate both conditions and repairs needed. Did that cover it? Yeah, I didn't have to get into all this extraneous stuff. I got right to the point. I wrote it up as a safety issue because we all think, we all recognize that mold-like substances can be dangerous depending on what kind of mold it is. So I just want to bring it to their attention. So that's why I called it out as a safety issue. Okay, so that was basically it. I hope you can utilize that in your report writing. We're going to go over the software very quickly. It'll take us literally about 5 minutes or so. I wanted to keep this to an hour, so I'm gonna pull up that software just very quickly to show you what it produces. But these are the instructions on how to activate the 60-day free trial on the software. So take a picture of that if you want to take a photograph of that or whatever, if you want to try it. Then after 60 days, it's simply $19.95 a month. I use it on all my inspections. And folks, let me tell you, I've used different software, and I can tell you that this is user-friendly. Real estate agents like it because of the summary and so forth. So you might want to give it a shot. I'm going to pause the share here so that I can pull up something for you to look at here. And that's the actual software, the report that it produces. And I'll have that for you in just a second here. Where is that sucker? Here it is. So here's what the report looks like in its finished form. And it was that report I showed you just very briefly earlier in the slide presentation. But if you look, it gives you the cover page here. And then what happens to it is this is an overview, which kind of the house in perspective is the house from, I call it from 30,000 feet. It kind of is a way general overview. And of course, you can edit that any way you want. The conventions used in the report are the 5 categories that I told you about. So it tells your client what those 5 categories represent. And then everything I wrote in the body of the report migrates up on its own to the summary and is classified based on how I categorized it. So concerns are first, safety issues are second, repair items are third, improvement items, and then items to monitor are last. Then we go down, and each section has its own area, and we fill all these things out in the software. So in the structure, we talk about a description of the structure. That structure observation right here is just the structure from 30,000 feet. Then we go into the details about the structure, any kind of recommendations we have to make about the structure. And you can see here all these different things like dryer venting into the crawl space. And then we go through by section. There's a roofing section. There is and I can add pictures, of course, all along the way. We have a section on exterior. We have a section on, it goes through all the disciplines, electrical, and these are where we have to talk about all the things that are required in the standards of practice. So the reporting software meets the standards very well. It covers all the disciplines. And I send the report out as a PDF file. I do not make copies of any of the reports that I do. They're all PDF documents that I send out. And we talk about cooling and insulation, and we get all the way down to the end where fireplaces is our last thing. And you have the option to eliminate any of these sections that don't apply to that particular inspection that you're doing. But you can see the different appliances, and then fireplaces is our last thing. And then there's an option when you go to do the report and actually finish the report, where you can add this maintenance advice. That's an option. You just check a box whether you want to add it. And then there's also a final an addendum that you can add or not, and that is a cost summary. I got tired of people asking me, how much does it cost to do this repair or that repair? So I came up with a list based on a contractor's estimate. This thing's about a year old, so it's pretty current still, but it just gives them a rough idea. It doesn't lock me into anything, but like I said, I got kind of tired of people asking me how much this was going to cost for that. So I just tell them, hey, listen, coming with the report is this addendum. You can look it over and see, prepare for just about anything you want to do or add. So with that being said, we're not going to actually go through the software. You can do it. Just go to the trial and you'll see it's very user-friendly. There are a couple of instructional videos to show you what you do to add things. And it's, like I say, very user-friendly. I don't think you'll have any issues with that. As far as questions on what we've talked about at all, I'm happy to entertain any questions. Wanted to keep it to the hour, so I know I talked kind of fast, but I did the best I could to keep it to an hour. So any questions any of y'all have that I can help you with, or anything pertaining to anything? Doesn't necessarily be software or report writing.
Steve, I don't have a question, but if I make a comment, please.
Sure, go ahead.
We talked, spent a lot of time talking about writing comments. I wanted to just let everyone know that this software, by the way, the comments that Steve went through are already written for you. They automatically populate. So you can go in and edit them, but the basic comment is already there. As you click a box in the software, the comment appears. So you don't have to write a comment for everything you check. The comment's written for you, and then you can just go back in and edit it as you see fit, or not, if it's suitable. So
Yeah,
okay,
good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, the whole point of the report writing was for me to say you really need to know. All of us need to know how to write a comment from scratch, because not all of those comments are in the library, but a good number of the things you're going to see on an ongoing basis, most of those already have comments that are pre-written, and all you got to do is change maybe the location of where it was, or edit it to fit the specific situation that you're looking at. But thank you, Bill. Yeah, that's a good point. Anybody else have any comments or questions? I do want to thank you all for attending. I hope you did feel like this was worth an hour of your time, and that maybe you learned something. If not, just some other tidbits that might help you to get your job done and get it done efficiently. So with that being said, if nobody has any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the meeting. And just again, thank you all for being here. And you've got my phone number, so if I can ever be of any help to you, feel free to text or call me, and I'm more than happy to get back in touch with you. So, all right, everybody. Well, good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.